We are literally counting down the days to a potential U.S. government shutdown. Now, this is a high-stakes political battle happening in Washington, for sure, but the consequences could ripple out and affect millions of us. So how do we get here, right to the brink, and what actually happens if we go over the edge?
And no, this isn't some hypothetical question from a civics class. It's the very real situation facing the country right now, as lawmakers are just stuck. They're locked in a standoff, and honestly, the consequences of not finding a way out are massive.
Here's the hard deadline, October 1st. If Congress can't agree on and pass a funding bill by then, huge parts of the federal government will simply start to power down. The clock is absolutely ticking.
So what's the holdup? What's the big deal? Well, it all comes down to a fundamental disagreement over what should be in a temporary funding bill. To really get what's going on, you've got to understand the two very different plans on the table.
Okay, first let's get a key piece of jargon out of the way. A continuing resolution, or CR for short. Think of it like a temporary patch. It's not a full, detailed budget for the year. It's just a stopgap measure to keep the government's lights on while the politicians keep negotiating. The problem? Everybody agrees a CR is needed, but they are miles apart on what should actually be in it.
And here's where you can really see the two competing philosophies at play. On one side, the Republican plan is what they're calling a clean CR. It's pretty simple. Just extend the current funding levels until November 21st and don't attach any big, controversial policy changes. But the Democratic plan is totally different. They see this must-pass bill as a moment of leverage to push for their own priorities, especially on healthcare. They want to extend ACA tax credits and reverse some recent Medicaid cuts. Two very different approaches.
So, with two totally different plans on the table, you can imagine things are getting pretty heated. The war of words in Washington is escalating, and the public statements from party leaders, well, they show you just how deep this divide really is. So from the Republican side, you have Senate Majority Leader John Thune, and he's putting the responsibility squarely on the Democrats. His argument is basically, hey, we passed a reasonable, clean bill. All we need is a few of them to cross the aisle and vote with us to keep the government open. But then you hear from Senate Minority Leader Chuck Schumer, and he frames it completely differently. He's saying a clean bill just isn't acceptable because it ignores what he sees as critical issues, especially health care. For him, this isn't about falling in line. It's about forcing Republicans to come to the table for a real bipartisan negotiation. And then, of course, there's the White House. President Trump has also weighed in, signaling that he sees a shutdown as a very real possibility. He's essentially framing the Democratic demands as non-starters that don't leave much, if any, room to negotiate.
Okay, so that's all the political drama, but this fight isn't just some abstract thing happening in D.C. This deadlock has real, tangible consequences for millions of actual people. So let's talk about how this could affect you.
Let's just start with this number, because it is staggering. 8.7 million. That's how many people, including almost 600,000 kids, could lose their Medicaid coverage because of the funding cuts at the very heart of this political fight. This isn't just a statistic. It's the real human cost. And here's another one to wrap your head around. 79%. That's the average jump in out-of-pocket costs for people who get their health insurance through the ACA marketplace if these subsidies expire. For millions of families, a cost increase like that isn't just an inconvenience. It's financially devastating. And of course, a shutdown hits federal workers directly and immediately. Their paychecks just stop. Now, while there's a law that guarantees they'll get back pay once the shutdown ends, that doesn't help pay the mortgage or buy groceries in the meantime. People's lives and their plans are just thrown into chaos. So, with the stakes this high and the deadline staring us all in the face, where do things even stand right now? Is there any path out of this mess?
You know, you'd think with a deadline this close they'd be working around the clock, right? Well, get this. With just days to go, both chambers have actually left Washington for a recess. They're not even scheduled to come back until September 29th, which leaves them just 2 working days to solve this massive disagreement. The pressure is going to be immense when they get back.
You know, this whole thing, this brinksmanship, this high-stakes game of chicken, it feels like it's become a regular part of American politics. And it really makes you wonder, do we just have to live with this constant threat of shutdowns, or is there some way to finally break this cycle? The good news is there are some ideas floating around for a permanent fix. One of them is called the Eliminate Shutdowns Act. The idea is that it would create an automatic funding stream that kicks in if Congress misses its deadline.
It's a structural change that would basically take the threat of a shutdown off the table for good.
But hey, that's a long-term solution. Right now, we've got a short-term crisis. So the big question hanging over everything is this. When lawmakers get back with just hours to spare, will they pull a last-minute compromise out of a hat, or is the country really headed for a shutdown that's going to impact millions? What do you think is going to happen? Let us know down in the comments.